Good morning, I think, still? Good morning. Sorry. My name is Jodie Anderson, and I'm the director of the University of Alaska Fairbanks Experiment Farm and Extension Center. So really quickly, I'd like to introduce where I work. I run a 920-acre experiment, so research, extension, and education facility in Palmer, Alaska. I get to work for UAF and not have to live in Fairbanks. It's the best. So to give you a little bit, to give myself a little credibility with you as to why I'm standing here in front of you as just a director of a farm. It's a beautiful farm, by the way. I'm a soil scientist. And as a good friend told me once, all soil scientists have to prove they are by showing a picture of their butt in a presentation. I'm a soil scientist, and I've done agricultural research here in Alaska for the last 16 years, which has been fascinating and amazing. And it's shown me a whole lot about what we have going on in Alaska that many people don't know, but also what the potential could possibly be. And that's really what I want to talk to you about today, is that potential, and specifically about ag as an export from Alaska. So some of you are already like, really? Come on, Jodie, seriously? No, seriously. Back between 1920 and 1929, 6.33 million pounds of reindeer meat was exported from Alaska to the lower 48. That's a lot without airplanes, right? In fact, the Lohman brothers from the Nome area, they had this project going on, and they connected in 1923 with Macy's. And during that Macy's Day Parade in 1923, they shipped live reindeer to New York City for that parade to show up with Santa Claus. And that was the beginning of having reindeer with Santa kind of in the media as a marketing campaign from Alaska. What we didn't know, right? And it was all because of exporting an agricultural product in the 1920s. Can we do it today? Yes, we can. Don't think that we can't. It's just a matter of figuring out what we need to do and how to do it. That's the easy stuff, right? So let's start with the easiest of the easy things. For goodness sakes, would you please consider the potato? The lowly potato. Actually, believe it or not, potatoes, I like to call them the dumbest vegetable on earth. I know, it's kind of mean, isn't it? But it's true. They grow everywhere. And guess what? Moose hate them. Right? They're not going to eat them. Like they're going to eat your apples and all your other things. They may stomp on them. They may lie down on them. But they don't eat them. So they're moose-proof. They grow everywhere. I have friends who are above the Arctic Circle growing potatoes. Potatoes with milk equal a legitimate food source, nutritional source for human beings. That's all you need. I'm not saying that's a good choice. I'm just saying it's an option. So because they're the dumbest vegetable on earth, and because they grow everywhere, all over Alaska, and I've also done research on potatoes, and I know a few things about potatoes, but not so much am I recommending that we export potatoes, just grown-up potatoes. But in fact, what I'm going to recommend to all of us today is seed potatoes. The development of the seed potato industry. So, I'm not talking about little seeds that come in a packet called potato. Those are very difficult to raise, by the way. If you're curious, give it a shot. It's really hard. Fortunately for us, though, potatoes grow through vegetative propagation. So if you can save potatoes that you harvest this fall time, over the winter time, you can plant them next spring. And magically, a plant grows. And you end up with potatoes to harvest that you can eat and save some for seed for next year. How about that? But the super cool thing about seed potatoes in Alaska is a weird, creepy story. And I'm just going to fill you in on this weird, creepy story. And it starts in a weird, creepy way, because I have to now admit to you that I am a graduate of potato school. Thank you. But the weird part about potato school, that's a weird sentence, right? I mean, like, all the things were weird about potato school. But the really weird thing about potato school is, aside from the fact it was in Canada, I hung out with the few Americans that were there, and there happened to be an inspector from Idaho. What a weird state to talk about potatoes. And this gentleman in Idaho, we were standing there one day, probably drinking a beer, and he goes, "So tell me, how often do you guys have to spray?" I said, "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" He goes, how often do you guys have to spray in Alaska, just in case? Spray for just in case what? And he goes, "Oh." He said, "Here in Idaho, we spray antifungals from crop dusters every 10 days just in case they get an infectious outbreak. They don't need to, maybe, or maybe they do. They're spraying every 10 days. And I looked at him, I was like, we don't. In fact, we don't have crop dusters in Alaska. In fact, the very coolest thing and the biggest take-home message that I want you to think about today is that in Alaska, because we're so isolated from the rest of the United States, where they have this disease presence, where they have problems with insects, we don't have those things here yet. But we don't have those things. We don't have the Colorado potato beetle. We don't have to worry about it. And when we don't have to worry about it, we don't have to spray for it. We don't have to add chemicals to our things. So the good news is Alaska is clean. It's so very clean. We don't have the fungal infections that generally show up in lower 48 fields because we don't have the carriers for it. We also don't have a lot of the viruses that show up because either we don't have the insects that spread them or we don't have that prevalence. But as soon as we lack and start slowing down on our inspections of our seed potato lots, the chance of these things sliding in is pretty great. My goodness. In 2018, 14 states in the United States have a seed potato development program. What that means is there are 100,000 acres in production and seed, and we have that much of the market, 0.04%. Ooh, there's room for growth. What do we need? We need a combination of many things to come together, but the three things that I feel like are needed for our future success in exporting seed potatoes is we need regulatory increases and secure regulatory situations. We have one inspector right now, and that program was originally near cut and then brought back. Consistency in our regulatory fields to keep our clean seed potatoes clean. We need marketing. We need partnering with all the people to increase the potential for this export. So I hope you've learned a little something today about the potential for export markets with seed potatoes, and I also hope you found it appealing.